Mary had a little lamb.
We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today.
Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Help is on the way.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
It is striking just how many people are former veterans who are now accused of attacking the U.S. Capitol. They came to Washington trained in warfare, wearing combat gear, forming a line, marching up the Capitol steps, and then use their training against the U.S. Capitol. These three Americans are some of the first to face the most severe charges in the attack on the Capitol, including conspiracy, obstruction of an official proceeding, and violent entry or disorderly conduct. All three are U.S. veterans. 65-year-old Thomas Edward Caldwell served in the Navy. 50-year-old Donovan Ray Crowell is a former Marine. This is Crowell inside the Capitol building on January 6th.
Overran the Capitol.
We're in the Capitol, bro.
The person who popped up behind him is Jessica Marie Watkins. She served in the Army as Jeremy David Watkins. On January 6th, the former Army veteran riled up her troops in person and on the social media site Parler. We stormed the Capitol today. Watkins is a member of the Oath Keepers, an extremist anti-government group. She also started her own self-styled militia in Ohio. We wanted to know more about these Americans now charged with attacking the democratic transfer of power they claim to support. So we went to their towns. Turns out, Watkins runs a bar with her partner in the village of Woodstock, Ohio. I spoke with a neighbor who lives down the street from this bar who didn't want to be identified, but he told us that this is the watering hole for this town of about 300 people, and that when you would go in to get your beer, Watkins would often try to recruit you to her militia. He said most people didn't bite, but we know at least one person did because he was in D.C. with Watkins, and they were both arrested. That person was Donovan Crowell, who lives just down the street from Watkins' bar.
I am her boyfriend. She is not a violent person.
Montana Sniff and Watkins run the bar. The two live upstairs where the FBI showed up last week.
Oh my God. It is pretty upsetting, disappointing, shocking, disgusting. There's a million adjectives that actually come into play when you understand how many of these people are former military, former law enforcement. I don't know if you realize this or not, but Stewie, yeah, that's what his friends call him. Stewie, whose real name is Elmer, yeah. Stewie not only is a former paratrooper, but Stewie also graduated Yale Law. Yeah, I know it's a big wow. It is a big wow. But you know, this is why it's so sickening to hear, Republican creatures of power, say things like the public school system is failing our children, or here in Florida, I don't even know if you realize this or not, but this is a preview into what's coming for all of us if we don't realize that, a Democratic administration, in order to free itself from violence and militia types and lying and cheating and swampy behavior and big money and dark money and rigging elections and picking who counts your votes now and sending in forged fake documents, all the things that we've experienced lately. If you don't realize by now, and I hope to God people remember this when they vote in 2022, that a Democratic administration needs a Democratic Congress to work with and a Democratic Supreme Court to work with, or at least one that isn't infiltrated by Trump nominees who have never decided a case in their whole lives. We now have two Supreme Court justices who have both been accused of being handsy, let's say, with, either people in the workplace or people at their school. I was watching a confirmation hearing yesterday for, somebody who is going to make it onto the court. And Marsha Blackburn from North Carolina, who used to serve in the House and is now, a senator, was questioning this candidate, who obviously is a man of integrity, about his traffic tickets, and saying that his traffic tickets, seriously, was the reason she would not confirm him to the judgeship, to a federal court judgeship. I mean, it's so sick and twisted, and it's so ugly. And if you don't understand that the media is going to now tell you how bad Biden's week was, because it really wasn't good, but it wasn't good because of the people that Biden has to do deals with, which, yes, include two self-centered, money-grubbing, greedy, overly ambitious senators from the Democratic Party. And, of course, that's Manchin and Sinema, but includes every single Republican senator who will not vote to confirm a guy with traffic tickets, but will vote to confirm people who have never tried a case in their lives, or people who have been accused of successfully in public of being handsy and unwelcome in the sexual arena. And are confirmed with ease, are just woo, right? Or Republicans that don't believe that, constitutional rights are actually guaranteed, that constitutional rights may come and go at the whim of the majority in the state senates, in the state houses, that unilaterally with a simple majority vote, you can undo the rights that we've come to rely on, but that standing up to that taking of rights requires a supermajority when you get to the U.S. Senate. I mean, it's a sick scenario that we found ourselves in. So you can either buy into the narrative that Biden is failing and Biden is a bad president and Biden is this and Biden is that, or you can be seriously disappointed in the Republican Party for actually producing these military members who want to use their military training to overthrow our damn government and lie about what they knew. Will actually make excuses for that by saying it was a tourist visit, or by saying it was, a peaceful protest, or by not cooperating with an investigation to get to the bottom of what is going on in the U.S. military that is causing the radicalization of members, what is going on in churches that is causing the radicalization and the acceptance of mis and disinformation about a virus, what is going on the paid airwaves, like the War Room broadcast or the Spotify people, or any of those things that constantly get away with, propelling disinformation and misinformation out to the masses. Or you can, actually have a little look-see at the mainstream media and how they don't focus like a laser on the fact that we are literally losing our democracy, our ability to self-govern. Or you can look, there's a million places to look other than one man, which seems to be a simple solution to being pissed off in this country. Let's blame Biden. How do you blame Biden for the militia movement that was born in the military? How do you blame Biden for what the mainstream media is doing in with the goal of being fair and balanced, because they called out a lying sack of classless crap as being a lying sack of classless crap that encouraged this kind of violence from military members, encouraged this kind of violence from former and current law enforcement officers, which is the breadth and depth of these militia members. It's so lazy, it's so unbelievable, and it's just inexcusable because Biden has no one to work with, okay? It's sad. It's ridiculous. The only thing that I could see Republicans voting for with Biden on is starting another war if Russia invades Ukraine. That's about it. Right, Snow?
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
it's hard to underemphasize how significant this is. The last time that I believe seditious conspiracy was successfully charged by the United States was like 1995, Sheikh Omar Abdel Rahman, the blind sheikh, for trying to blow up the United Nations and the New York FBI headquarters, and 9 of his cohorts. So think about that. Let that soak in, that we charged seditious conspiracy against international terrorists trying to blow us up. And now we're doing it against our own. And even more sobering for me, Nicole, is the fact that who's got charged here? Oath keepers. Who are they primarily? U.S. military, active duty and retired, and law enforcement, active duty and retired. Stuart Rhodes is a former U.S. Army paratrooper. This is where we are in the United States. So any excitement or exuberance about how this pushes the investigation forward and how it clearly signals a commitment by the FBI and DOJ to take this very seriously is tempered by the fact that I'm soaking in the fact that these are vets. Yeah. These are cops. This isn't right.
No, it is. And remember when Ashley Babbitt was murdered? She was a vet too. Okay, she was an Air Force vet. I'm an Air Force vet. I remember how hard it was for me to wrap my brain around how an Air Force vet could have ended up in a conspiracy minded, eventually violent insurrection. Well, now we know. I mean, listen, the Oath Keepers, they recruit from former military. They recruit from former law enforcement. They literally go out and try and get disaffected veterans or post-traumatic stress disordered people or people who are easily manipulated or are, able to be part of groupthink, don't individually analyze, facts as you find them, reality for that. And add to it that reality is now being shaped by social media. Reality is now being shaped by podcasts. Reality is now being shaped by, paid media, social media. The military shapes you. The military totally shapes you. They break you completely down to the point where you're so exhausted, you're so tired. I mean, they do the tried and true way of brainwashing somebody: sleep deprivation, isolation, exercising you nearly to death, feeding you only as like a reward. It's like training a dog, right? They literally break you down, and then they fill you up with their values and their skills and their techniques and their way of thinking, which is a groupthink way of thinking. In this weird way, it's very liberal, not in the groupthink way, but in the way that you are told over and over again, and it is demonstrably true that you're only as good as the weakest among you. See, that's what I took from it. That made me much more apt and much more able to fight for lifting people up, making them as strong and as smart and as good as they were capable of being. That's how I responded to that kind of training. But you do have people, I've served with a lot of them, who are very weak-minded, who really are captured by groupthink. And now what we have is a society that is totally, totally separated in their understanding of reality. And again, it boils down to the fact that social media is collecting all kinds of psychological profiling. They have too many data points on millions and if not billions of human beings in this world. That has got to stop. That has to end. I mean, if everybody is sitting here struggling about, what do we do about social media? I mean, we're subpoenaing, they're now subpoenaing Reddit and Twitter and Facebook because there were 650,000 anti-government, overthrow the government, violent messages ahead of January 6th that were never flagged by Facebook, that were never flagged by YouTube, that were never... you know what? That's not the point. The point is that they are collecting analytics. They're collecting data, and they have an algorithm that interprets that data and then sends your way the things you click on, sends you more of what you seem to stay engaged with, feeding the beast essentially based on data points that they are collecting. Now, that collection has to stop. This has nothing to do with free speech. This has nothing at all to do with free speech. This collection of data and the targeting of people based on their likes and their dislikes and their ability to be triggered by violent messages or triggered by kittens or this has got to end. Because again, people are not, the people in the Republican Party, I don't think that they're that afraid of Donald Trump, although he is a very good salesman. He's a snake oil salesman, and he's very good at selling any piece of bullcrap he wants to sell. The only reason why Donald Trump won't say he's not running for president is because he doesn't want to end the money gravy train. You understand? He's still running a ruse. He's still running a grift, and it's paying off for him. I mean, he's obviously still fundraising off of his ability to trigger people. But I don't, I don't think Donald Trump is going to run for president again. I just don't. I could be wrong. We don't need to litigate that right now. But what I do need to litigate right now is that if we had a Congress that was responsible or that gave a damn about this scam that's going on against the American people, and that scam includes basic rights like voting. That scam runs counter to basic rights like freedom of speech, because one party is seen as wanting to cripple or impede or impugn or somehow limit what can be said, which is bullcrap. The real goal should be, and I'm not clear that it is, limiting the amount of data points that any private entity or any government, for that matter, can have on its people. Listen, you want to do a Nazi comparison for those of you who respond to Nazi comparisons? Yeah, Marjorie Taylor Greene, the vaccination mandate has nothing to do with Nazis, okay? It just doesn't. And individual state legislators have nothing to do with, that are screaming about Nazi connections to vaccines. It's ridiculous. It's stupid. And it doesn't hold water. It's positraction. But the real goal ought to be what the Republicans and what these militia people are so afraid of from their own government, and that is data collection. They don't want their data collected. They are anti-government because they somehow got in their head that the U.S. government is tracking you with these vaccines, right? It's all about that. Meanwhile, they're all carrying these freaking phones that are tracking you. And if we could just get a clear message out to people, if we could just speak, and Biden's a terrible salesman, I'll give you that. But if he could just express it the way I just did, we could have agreement.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
These bills help treat the symptoms of the disease, but they do not fully address the disease itself. And while I continue to support these bills, I will not support separate actions that worsen the underlying disease of division infecting our country. The debate over the Senate's 60-vote threshold shines a light on our broader challenges. There's no need for me to restate my long-standing support for the 60-vote threshold to pass legislation. There's no need for me to restate its role protecting our country from wild reversals in federal policy. It is a view I've held during my years serving in both the U.S. House and the Senate, and it is the view I continue to hold.
Well, here's the thing. The disease or the cancer that is in American democracy, the cancer like Richard Nixon was a cancer on the presidency. Donald Trump was a cancer on the presidency too. That's the disease, okay? The disease is the cancer. And while she just recognized that treating the symptoms of the disease is an important step forward, you know, and considering we're in the middle of a pandemic where we can't cure ourselves, you can't cure yourself, okay, or you can't prevent yourself from getting COVID. We've learned that, and we've learned that the hard way. You can't prevent it. You can prevent severe illness, and you can treat it on the other side. There are therapeutics, there are antivirals, there are monoclonal antibody treatments, and, you know, depending on which strain you have, you know, there are, you know, monoclonal antibodies for Delta that don't work on Omicron, and there are ones that work on Omicron but won't work. You see what I mean? So treating the symptoms, Kirsten, is very major when you have a diseased population. However, the disease that we have is called propaganda and poison presidents. We have had our share of poison presidents, some in the media era, some prior to the media era. Guys who believed in Indian removal, people who believed in genocide as president of the United States, people who believed lying us into $7 trillion worth of war and 1 million dead people over there was, you know, the price to pay for uber patriotism and rallying around that particular president. And it was a price they were willing to pay. Murder, yes. And torture, yes. They were willing to pay that price. Donald Trump was willing to pay the price of disease, actual pandemics, and actual lying, and actual radicalization of an entire population, and propaganda, and encouraging ex-military guys to rally around him, and, you know, police officers to allow for the invasion of the Capitol. You know, we saw our share of police officers allowing those, you know, insurrectionists into the Capitol. Let's not pretend that we didn't see it. We saw it. It happened. So I don't know why she's not willing to treat the symptoms of that disease, but expects that a voting rights bill is somehow going to cure us. I think that's expecting a little tad too much from a piece of legislation that simply guarantees a constitutional right to vote. But look, the rumor about her now is, and this is sick, I don't even know if I should believe it. But the rumor about Kirsten is Kirsten thinks that she is presidential material. Kirsten has it in her little head that she's an everyman who could appeal to the same voters as Donald Trump. And she can't be seen as somebody who's on the side of any political party. She has to stake out her position as a uncommon commoner. You know what I mean? That's ridiculous, but that's apparently what's motivating her to be an impediment to voting, especially when her state that she has to, you know, operate in is one of the leading states of voter suppression and voter subversion. Manchin, on the other hand, wants to be governor of West Virginia again, and he's not term limited because he was a one-term governor. I think I've kind of, you know, examined it long and hard enough to say that's my opinion about what's motivating their over-ambitious natures and their over-ambitious greed. They need money to do these things, lots and lots of it. And I really think that's what's motivating her and Manchin. However, do not be distracted from her lame explanation yesterday that while I want to treat the symptoms of what's ailing us, I don't think that voting rights is going to cure us of the disease of polarization or division. Well, the disease of polarization and division is happening on many different levels. One of the most fundamental levels is the data collection that's being done by social media. And if she's at all interested in the division and curing the disease, you would think that she would be very interested in passing legislation that prohibits private businesses, private entities of any sort, from collecting thousands of data points on any American citizen. This is what motivates the militia movement. They're seriously convinced that the government is collecting all these data points on ordinary citizens, which they're not, and that the vaccine is part of the tracking of Americans, which it is not. But this is what they've been lied to about so often that they believe it, and they're repeating it. So, like I said, there's room here for consensus between the people who are uber paranoid about government data collection, a la Nazism. You know, you do understand that the Nazi, you know, the big question about how did the Nazis even know where the Jews were? How did the Nazis even know where the gays were? How did the Nazis even know where the sympathetic Christians were? The people who were going to help the people targeted for the final solution, or the people who were targeted for ghettoization in Polish ghettos. How did they know where these people were? It was data, IBM data cards. It was, a corruption of a census. It was, a collection of data. This is that on steroids. And so if you wanted to have a meeting of the minds, Kirsten, and you were really interested in something other than fundraising or being president of the United States or, feathering your nest or your overambitious nature, you would actually be telling people that the disease is caused by data collection from private businesses, social media, paid media, the spreading of propaganda, and poison presidents, okay? And you would be willing to treat the symptoms of that disease with protections for voters. But she's not. It's a lie. This argument she made yesterday is so weak, and it's so transparent, and it's so easy to put holes in it. It wasn't even thoughtful. It didn't, But never mind her. Never mind her. You have an entire GOP that loves this data being collected by private businesses, because then they can target you for their fundraising. They can target you for their negative messaging. They can target you with outrage. They can target you with resentment and anger and make you vote against your own best interest by voting for them yet again. You see what I mean? It's just an endless cycle of hate.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
We all ask questions about complicated subjects like, can you get this done? I hope we can get this done. The honest to God answer is, I don't know whether we can get this done. Is this mic on? I guess, anyway. And I'm not sure either. But anyway, I hope we can get this done. But I'm not sure. But one thing for certain, like every other major civil rights bill that came along, if we missed the first time, we could come back and try it a second time. We missed this time. And the state legislative bodies continue to change the law, not as to who can vote, but who gets to count the vote. It's about election subversion, not just whether or not people get to vote. Who counts the vote? That's what this is about. That's what makes this so different than anything else we've ever done. I don't know that we can get it done, but I know one thing. As long as I have a breath in me, as long as I'm in the White House, as long as I'm engaged at all, I'm going to be fighting to change the way these legislatures have moving. Thank you.
So isn't it interesting that the mainstream media cut out that portion of Biden's appearance last night after he met with Manchin and Sinema, that they cut out the part where he said, who counts the vote? This has to do with who counts the vote. This has to do with who counts the vote. This has to do with subversion. And all they played was Biden saying, I don't know if we could get this done, and as long as there's a breath left in me. Do you see what I'm saying to you? This bend over backwards sort of a thing to edit out what's really happening to our democracy, to, create these, recurring dramas every single day, instead of sounding the alarm, instead of standing on the hilltop and screaming at the top of your lungs, oh my God, we have a fascist party in this country that literally is trying to change the counters who count the ballots. They're trying to take the right to vote away, but they're trying to subvert the votes that we cast as well. Kyrsten Sinema is practicing asymmetrical warfare here in that we have all these sleeper cells, if you will, in the Republican state legislatures. One of them is hers in Arizona, that are trying to subvert who counts the vote. In Georgia, you know that Katie Hobbs in Arizona, okay, let's just stick with her state. They literally took power away from Katie Hobbs, the Secretary of State, to certify the results of an election, and they're giving it to the legislature. Now, Kyrsten Sinema freaking knows this, but she's playing this asymmetric warfare game where you have all these sleeper cells, essentially, in Republican states like Michigan and Wisconsin and Arizona. People who are literally willing to forge fake elector documents, fake ascertainments, to create confusion and chaos after an election. But she wants a supermajority to be required to undo what a bare majority, what a basic, simple majority in the states are doing. That's asymmetric warfare, where you have these sleeper cells in the states that with a simple majority are changing the way we conduct elections, changing who counts them, changing who certifies them, changing who chooses the winner. And she's saying, I really want to treat the symptoms of the cancer, but I'm not really there yet because I still believe that you need a supermajority where they only need a simple majority. I mean, it's just so sick and sad. But you do have an entire party of people that are doing the bad thing, that are doing the evil thing, that are doing the thing that benefits them over what benefits our country. Zeke in Portland.
Randi.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for making the point you made about the massaging of the data by private industry is stoking division in this country, and that you can't cure that with legislation. Thank you for that.
You can cure that with legislation, just not voting rights legislation.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm talking about, the voting rights.
Right.
I just wanted to make the point, if I may, Randi, that there is something to be very happy about and celebrate and encourage, and that is the fact that the President of the United States, Joseph Robinette Biden, used the bully pulpit twice in 2022, once on January 6th, again in Atlanta more recently. He did this for the first time in his presidency. He seems to be shaking off this fascist meme that says, well, Joe, you got elected to unify the country and be bipartisan. You can't use the bully pulpit to rally your own base and reach out to the reasonable people in the suburbs who might decide the next election. You can't do that. People need to go to www.whitehouse.gov/contact and send an email thanking Biden for doing what he has done, using the bully pulpit, and encourage him to do it a lot more. That's basically my point.
Well, there's another thing that needs to be done. And we have to let him know that we have his back, meaning we will give him the kind of Congress that he needs to do what he needs to do.
Agreed. But we need the kind of leadership in this moment, Randi, that the British people had in 1940 when they stood alone against the German Nazi onslaught, and they had the leadership of Winston Churchill. We need that level of leadership. Biden is just showing in real time that he may be able to provide that leadership that will lead us into 2022 midterm elections so that we can do what you say and give him the Congress that he needs behind him to get things done. But we got to have that leadership is my point. And Biden is showing signs that he's willing to provide that leadership. He needs to be encouraged. As I said, go to whitehouse.gov/contact, send him an email. They look at this stuff, and if they get a raft of emails from citizens saying, thank you, President, for doing this, do it more, it will have an effect.
So, I don't know that, social media, I guess, is, easy. Email or whatever you want to call it is easy to do. But, why don't we do what we used to do? And that is just everybody go to the post office today. Mm-hmm. Everybody get a postcard, just a simple postcard, and send it to, Pennsylvania Avenue, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, Washington, D.C., saying, we got your back. We got your back. And that's it. Just drop it in the mail. And let 1 million postcards show up at his doorstep so that there's a photo op. There's an ability to show that the American people are supportive of understanding the problem he's having with this Nazi party, this fascist party, this, I won't protect basic rights party. And stop looking at Cinema and Manchin as being impediments to progress and start telling him we get what the impediment to progress is, and it's the GOP. It's that party that doesn't want to see progress, that is afraid of progress, that literally will throw in with corporate America even when we have an extraordinary pandemic. And they will do everything and anything they can to, keep, people from having to go to workplaces where you have no say with who you're working with. You have no say about the space that you're going to be in. You have no say over the air filtration systems. And, we have a corporate Supreme Court that's going to say, oh, no mandates. No, it's not an occupational hazard, the COVID, which is what they said yesterday. We have to let him know that we get it, that we see what he sees, that we understand the frustration, that we understand that we did not give him a Congress he could work with. We did not give him anything to work with. And we did it to Obama, too. We did the same damn thing to Barack Obama also. Barack Obama had a majority for about 2 seconds, right? And it was a weak majority. And then we had the Joe Liebermans. Don't forget, we've seen this movie before. We had the Joe Liebermans of the world who said, you know what? I'll leave the Democratic Party and I'll become an independent and I will caucus with, I will give the Republicans the majority. I mean, this is the same old book. It's the same old playbook. It's running the same play. The Green Bay sweep. It is. And we've seen it before. And people just don't recall. I don't know. I don't know what it is that makes current events, that are current, that happened recently, so you can't call it back up. You just don't remember it. I don't know what that is. But Lieberman did it over the public option. Okay, that's what he did it. It was all about the ACA and including a public option. So there's nothing new under the sun about, fundraising Democrats who think that they're presidential material, fundraising off of our ability to live better lives or to be able to even access our ballots or have a free and fair count.
Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today.
Change has come to America.
Believe it.
Help is on the way.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
If President Biden sounded exasperated Thursday, it's no wonder. Setbacks came from every direction.
I know we're all frustrated as we enter this new year.
It started with voting rights. The president made his case in person on Capitol Hill, and yet 2 moderate Democrats remained unmoved, refusing to support a change to Senate rules that would make it easier for Democrats to pass major voting reform that Republicans oppose. Arizona's Kirsten Sinema is one of the 2 Democratic holdouts.
I will not support separate actions that worsen the underlying disease of division infecting our country.
The next blow came from the Supreme Court, which struck down the administration's new OSHA rule requiring workers at large companies to either get vaccinated or get routinely tested. In a 6-3 decision, the court's conservative majority wrote that the OSHA rule is a significant encroachment into the lives and health of a vast number of employees. And they said COVID is not an occupational hazard in most businesses.
It's a big loss for President Biden.
Republicans cheered.
To me, the mandate was a massive overreach by the government.
We're going to have to determine what the next steps are.
White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki was asked repeatedly Thursday about all the bad news.
Our effort is to do hard things, try hard things, and keep at it.
Seriously, dude, give him a Congress he can work with. Give him some semblance of the ability to govern. They just gloss over, which the GOP is against. The fact that we have a complete political party, an entire party that is against voting rights is stunning. The fact that we have a Supreme Court that has at least 2 sexual assaulters on it is stunning. The fact that we have a Supreme Court that includes justices that have never tried a case in their entire life is stunning. And the fact that they made a decision that COVID in the workplace is not an occupational hazard when we all know that the workplace is the most dangerous place in terms of COVID risk that workers face. This is what, it's just so unbelievable. It's crazy. And then they said, well, maybe they get COVID at school. Maybe they get COVID at a bar. Maybe they get COVID at a sporting event. Schools and bars and sporting events are workplaces. You morons. Listen, they are just literally trying to, undo any progress that can be made on stopping this pandemic or letting people have free and fair. It's so obvious. The vaccine and or testing requirement. It was either get vaxxed or get tested. Nobody was saying, okay, your body, your choice. Even when you're contagious, which pregnancy is not contagious. I just want to throw that in there. But adopting this my body, my choice thing, this was not that. This was saying if you didn't want to get the vaccine, if you really were so suspicious of a vaccine being able to, then you have to get tested, at least once a week, maybe twice a week, so that you don't infect your coworkers and crash our economy with people who are now testing positive because you wouldn't do either of those things. The vaccine and the testing requirements make us safer from the virus than we would be and are going to be otherwise. Oh, this is just so bizarre. And they just gloss over these facts, okay? They just completely just, it's too moderate. Why don't you do a report about what their hopes and dreams are, what they're aspiring to, why they're collecting all this money? Why don't you do a report on the money? Why don't you do a report on the dark money that is purchasing our senators? It's so unbelievable. But, they literally say, well, it's not an it's not a workplace issue because you could get COVID at school. School is a workplace for teachers and janitors and counselors and lunch ladies. You could get it at a sporting event. That's a workplace too. You could get it at a bar. That's a workplace too. Oh my God. Why in the world are we so, obviously the Supreme Court is corrupted too now, thanks to Trump. The corruption is it's just oozing. The disease is spreading. It's metastasizing, if you may, right? You could actually have breast cancer, but die from liver cancer, which is really breast cancer in the liver. They worked backward. They actually had a conclusion they wanted to come to protect their corporate, dark money donors that put them there. They literally worked backwards. They had a conclusion that they wanted to come to, and then they worked backwards to get there. That is not justice. That is not interpretation of the U.S. Constitution. OSHA literally stands for Occupational Safety and Hazard Administration. I mean, all they're supposed to be concerned with at OSHA, according to the authority that was given to OSHA by Congress through legislation, is workers' safety. That's it. And they literally said, I mean, the justices were so indiscriminate in this. They literally said, it's not a workplace, issue because you could get it. And, when I heard that questioning, remember? I heard that questioning where I think it was Sonia Sotomayor who was asking the lawyer for the small for the independent business, roundtable for this lobby shop, right? And she was saying, listen, when people go to work, they don't have a choice with who they're working with. They don't have a choice about the space between the workers. They don't have a choice about, the air filtration. This is one of the most dangerous places that people will go, is their workplace. And these are extraordinary circumstances. We have a pandemic, for God's sake. And they were like, no, this isn't a workplace issue. You could get it outside the workplace. But the outside the workplace places are workplaces too. Hey, here's one for you. Should we regulate the people who work in viral labs? Because that's a workplace. They're so disgusting. Brother David.
Sister, it is disgusting. Pregnancy is not contagious, but apparently self-destructive stupidity and corruption is.
Yes, it is.
As the chat room already knows, hi chat room, you know what to do. As a once and future journalist, specializing in arts and entertainment, I thought my jaw could not drop any lower to my knees than on Wednesday when the SAG Award nominations came out and Kristen Stewart was inexplicably not there. And if you've seen the movie, or if you see the movie, you would understand why that's a jaw dropper. All of Twitter and Hollywood are like going, huh?
What movie?
Spencer, the movie about
Diana. Mm-hmm.
But that's another story for another day. But it's a jaw-dropping omission. But from Kristen to Kirsten, and while you've laid it out, the possibilities, it still boggles my mind that prior to the president making his case for voting reform, she would have delivered that speech, when there is so much evidence that she has delivered the opposite, hitherto. I love the idea of sending postcards to the White House, but the idea I love more is people recognizing that these midterms, for once, it's not hype. These midterms are the most critical of this democracy and our lives.
Right. It's setting the stage for 2024 and whether or not we're going to have a free and fair election then, and also whether or not we're going to get out of this pandemic, and also whether or not we're going to have an economy.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
So you ask, what are we going to do to stop the spread of the pandemic? And if you can't see the virus, if you can't see anything, how are you going to do it? How can you stop it? How? You physically cannot see the virus. You don't know if it's in this room or it's outside or if it even exists right now in here.
Oh my God.
You have no clue. How are you going to stop that?
Okay, so that is a legislator. Swear to God, in Wisconsin, he's a state rep, okay? But the sick part about him, and the reason why I pulled Treg Ponchicki, saying that since you can't see COVID, you can't possibly stop a disease, right? Because you can't see, is because he sits on the health committee. Could you please stop electing stupid people? You just might have to rely on them in case of emergency. And in your break glass moment, you're going to come across Treg Ponchicki. It's outrageous, isn't it? It is. It's just totally okay. You want to hear our governor, the governor of Florida? not on COVID. We all know he's, a psycho on COVID. He doesn't want testing because he let all the tests expire. Yes, he had them in a warehouse and he let them all expire. And if it wasn't for our Secretary of Agriculture, Nikki Fried, telling us that he had 1 million tests in a warehouse that he failed to exchange, that he failed to ship out for free ahead of Christmas, knowing people were going to travel and that we had a new variant called Omicron. Instead, he just took our new Surgeon General, Mr. Ladapo, Mr. Ladapo, and he put him out in front of a podium and told Mr. Ladapo to inform the Florida citizenry that testing was bad, that they shouldn't even test themselves because he knew he had no tests. Okay? Just saying. This is the way they deal with the people of this state. But this is unrelated to that. This is, this is our governor who apparently has nothing else better to do with his time than to go and do interviews with Mark Levin. Seriously. This is what he did a couple days ago.
That political agenda is they want these kids to hate this country. They want them to reject our founding, our institutions, and they want to replace that with their leftist ideology, which would obviously be disastrous for this country's future. So the stakes are very high on that. But
oh my God,
there's a problem when you can say it, you can't do it. But what if they defy you? What if they're doing it? And so what we're going to be doing in this upcoming legislative session, we're going to give parents the ability to go in and get legal relief if they're not following our state standards with respect to history and government. And I think empowering parents to be involved, making sure parents have a right to inspect the curriculum. And it's not just about critical race theory. I mean, there's a lot of other inappropriate content that can be smuggled in by public schools. And in some parts of the country have it way worse than Florida in that regard.
Sort of makes you breathless, doesn't it? It sort of takes your breath away. It sort of leaves you speechless. Okay, so here is our governor in the state of Florida who allowed for 1 million COVID tests to expire without exchanging them or giving them for free or passing them out or, sending them through the mail or whatever. All the different options he had to deal. And instead, he has nothing better to do than to sit down with Mark Levin. There, I said it! Of the Federalist Society, okay? Mark Levin from the Heritage Foundation, Mark Levin, right? And propose that in the next legislative session in Florida, he's going to, and I swear to God, this is what the legislation requires. He wants, it's called the Video Cameras Public School Classrooms Pilot Program, where teachers are recorded visually and they all have to wear a microphone so that their words are recorded anytime they're in front of a classroom. Those videos would be subject to review by parents who have a problem with the history being taught in the classroom. They would have the ability then to sue a teacher for teaching American history that disturbs them or that they're not familiar with or that they don't like. So unless slavery is now somehow delivered in a cheerful, upbeat manner in Florida public classrooms, parents will be able to go and sue that teacher for teaching the truth about human bondage. Seriously. This is what it's going to look like if we elect even more stupid or uber ambitious or money grubbing people to offices of public trust and honor. I'm not kidding. This is a bill that was proposed for K through 12 classrooms because, public schools have always been their boogeyman. Now, why did they make public schools into this boogeyman? What's with this critical race theory, which we all know is not being taught in any place except for law schools and graduate classes? Why? Because just like we had Betsy DeVos as our education, she was the cabinet member at the Department of Education. They have been seeking to defund and make completely, just crush the public school system, the option, let's just say, of attending public school in this country, because they want charter schools with no regulation, with no gainful employment record, or even a record of getting accepted into, colleges. They want to defund public schools and transfer the money to either private schools, religious schools, charter schools, whatever. And that's what this has always been about. And so they made public school into the big boogeyman. Now, we all know that, public schools are amazing places. I went to public school. I'm not exactly an idiot. But this is what he's peddling, and Levin is a lawyer. He's a smart guy. He's not evil. He just uses evil means to make a living. And a lot of them do that. But it's just so sick and sad that this governor, who is responsible for an enormous amount of disease and death, whose wife unfortunately was diagnosed with breast cancer, is against early detection of disease, and now has downshifted into making public schools, where teachers are literally risking their lives, into the big boogeyman. Because teachers are going to, quote, smuggle in their leftist ideology. And that's why teachers need to be mic'd at all times, and teachers need to be recorded at all times, and parents need to be given access to the legal system to sue teachers. Now, the only thing I'm aware of that public school teachers smuggle in is school supplies with their own money. Holy crap.
Clear. Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
All right, RJ in Michigan.
Hi, Randi.
Hi, RJ.
I'm caller. And I have a question. When do the protections of the First Amendment end and the act of sedition begin? At what point do we say, you've crossed the line and you need to be stopped? Because it's glaringly apparent to me that the right-wing media and the websites are working in collusion with members of the RNC and its donors, and they've created a dangerous, subversive atmosphere. And
once you plan, I'm
actually afraid.
Okay, once you enter into a planning stage to commit a terrorist act, once you actually enter into a planning stage to do violence, to stop an official proceeding, or to, overturn the results of an election, that's when the line is crossed.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Seems to me they've already done it. And
so here's the thing. I hope everybody hears me again. I'm going to say it again, and I'll say it again and again until we get where we're going. To prove a case, okay, to prove a case and get a conviction, a unanimous conviction, which is required for all criminal trials. All criminal trials require a unanimous verdict from the jury. A unanimous verdict from the jury. We couldn't get that from the United States Senate after the impeachment trial for the insurrection, okay? You couldn't get that. So for the Justice Department to bring a case of sedition took them a year of very, nose to the grindstone investigatory, efforts by the FBI in various states in order to put together a case that not only showed what they were saying, but showed that they were planning and exercising they're actually executing their plan, meaning they now have receipts that Stewie Rhodes and his happy group of ex-veterans, which really pains me to say, purchased $17,500 worth of ammunition and slings and sights and guns and all that, and transported it, all of that stuff, to Washington and positioned it just across the river from the Capitol, and had boats ready to launch with these weapons if Stewie Rhodes pushed the button, if Stewie Rhodes called for that. Okay, so it's a long road, and it has nothing to do with free speech. It has to do with the planning and the execution of that plan. You don't have to be successful. You just have to take the steps. And the Justice Department has to be able, the prosecutor in this case, has to be able to tell a jury, show a jury the receipts that show clearly that not only were you out there saying these things and planning these things and in some hyperbolic way, but that you took efforts to execute your plan. That's when it crosses the line.
I see.
Now, we have had federal prosecutors. We had in I guess 2010. We had. Do you remember the Hootery militia? These are a bunch of religious psychos. Yes. Okay, remember them? Where are you called? You're
yes.
in Michigan. Of course, you remember them.
I'm in Michigan.
That's right. Okay, so that
a lot
was
of things have gone on.
Yes, that was a guy named David Stone and his son Joshua. They ended up pleading guilty just to the weapons charges, but the judge threw out the conspiracy charges, right? Because they couldn't show that they were executing on their conspiracy plans, that they were actually trying to overthrow the government. Some of them, in this militia, they declared them mentally incompetent to get out of these charges, which, is beyond the pale. But that's one of the methods that they used to get this case thrown out. So that's what I'm saying. It's very hard. And the fact that the DOJ and Merrick Garland and the FBI and all that, they charged seditious conspiracy, which is a huge charge, means they have the goods. They finally have a case. They have a case that they feel, the lawyer was on the TV last night for Stewie, and he was saying, well, Stewie didn't go into the building, therefore Stewie is innocent. No, Stewie didn't need to go into the building. Stewie just needed to buy weapons to support the effort to go into the building, which he did.
Okay, now, question. Mm-hmm. At a certain point, could they, or if they proved that he had correspondence with others to do his bidding for him, would that constitute sedition?
Oh, it would constitute.
And that's what I'm wondering.
Okay, so they charged Stewie with seditious conspiracy. And if Stewie decides that he would like to tell the federal prosecutors about people at the top of the food chain above him, let's say, people like Ted Cruz or people like Roger Stone or people like Donald Trump, and he has some sort of communication or some sort of evidence that could connect those people to the conspiracy to commit sedition, then yes. Okay.
Well, thank you so much for your answer. I really appreciate it. I just started watching your show, and I absolutely love it.
Well,
hey, keep up the good work.
You keep it up. You're the man. Okay, it's your responsibility in this endeavor. So thank you.
Yes,
I appreciate you.
I'm taking it seriously. Thank you.
You're welcome. Kenneth in Louisiana.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, first-time caller.
Oh, hey. Welcome.
Thank you. Listen, I'm going to try to keep this brief. First things first, let me just put out a quick history. I'm African-American. I am from the same small town that I grew up in, grew up in South Louisiana. I'm in St. Mary Parish. That's near Patterson, Morgan City, that whole bit,
okay.
That area. I joined the Army in 1990 on delayed enlistment. I went in 91. Now, I was in boot camp when the ground war started, so I'm just letting you know I wasn't in the Persian Gulf. So got out in 94. I was stationed actually in Fort Stewart, Georgia. And my unit was the 1st or 2nd mechanized. I was in the same, I was in 18th Airborne Corps with the 82nd and the 101st. So
Unreal.
you and I are,
yeah.
You and I are military brother and sister.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So listen, I want to keep this brief because, military people, we can ramble on. I watched Joe Biden's speech in Atlanta the other day, right? Granted, it's time that he spoke about voting rights, the whole bit in front of African Americans, everything. They bring it to the Senate. What they do, here comes Senator Sinema talking about she's not changing the filibuster. It is time that we start talking about Plan B. Plan B is it is time to get Democrats to do what Joe Biden was able to do to win the presidency, overperform on voting.
Yep.
Get more people to the polls.
Yep.
Begin that now.
Yes.
Don't wait until the summer. Democrats, we have the mechanism to do that now.
I agree with you.
We can begin to motivate people. Randy, let me make it brief. My polling place is right down the street. I'll just say it. It's a Baptist church right down the street. I can walk to my polling place right now. Now, this is Louisiana. We've changed the rules. It's same-day registration. You can correct me. I think it either doesn't exist.
We're out of time, but I get your point. We need to register everybody now. Millions.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
There was no insurrection, and to call it an insurrection, in my opinion, is a bold-faced lie. Watching the TV footage of those who entered the Capitol and walked through Statuary Hall showed people in an orderly fashion staying between the stanchions and ropes, taking videos and pictures. If you didn't know the TV footage was a video from January the 6th, you would actually think it was a normal tourist visit.
Could we please stop electing stupid people? Could we please stop electing liars and cheats and thieves and con men? Please. That guy is from Georgia, Andy Clyde. Get rid of him. He has to run every 2 years. That includes this year. Stuart Rhodes, Stewie, as his friends call him, even though his name is Elmer. Stewie Rhodes, Yale graduate and paratrooper ex that he is, was just arraigned, okay? He is now in custody. No cameras, no cell phones were allowed into the room. But the government is seeking detainment for him, meaning that he would be incarcerated pending his trial. And they will give him a hearing on, guess what day, everybody? January 20th. Inauguration day. But the judge has ordered him held incarcerated, held in detention until the 20th, until his trial, can ensue, until they can do a hearing. Let's say not a trial, but a hearing. So, I mean, honest to God, man, these people, could we please, and, our caller from Louisiana, he's exactly right. I think I began talking about Plan B this week, actually, where I mentioned to you that you need to get yourself registered if you're not already. And if you are, if you're listening to the show, my best guess is you are. But what about your children? What about your over 18s? What about your just turning 18s? What about your cousin or your friend or your crazy uncle even? Get people registered. And you know how you do it? Do you? Rock the Vote still works. Believe it. That old MTV website, it still works. You can go to rockthevote.com and you can register right now. Right now. It's so easy. And there are millions of eligible voters in this country that aren't registered. And so you can do that right now. You can literally walk somebody right through. It's so simple. I mean, when you go to rockthevote.com, it's going to ask you, for your email address and your name and your date of birth, whether or not you have a driver's license, because ID is required. And that's it. And then you're going to be registered to vote. It's so easy. This is what Republicans hate. Hate it. But it's there, and you can do it. Casey in Florida.
Hey, how you doing, Randy? Long time.
Hey.
Well, listen, you were talking about the militia and all this other stuff. This isn't just from Trump. The militia have been wanting a civil war since Reagan. I'm talking about from Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota. They've been engaged for decades, and basically what Trump did is give them the platform to finally have the civil war they wanted. They've been wanting. Conservatives are a whole different breed, and they want to sabotage government. And so it doesn't run properly. They don't, they want to live in colonial times. Like we're living modern times. You have to pay to play. In other words, you want internet, roads, stuff like that. They think we still live on dirt roads. I mean, they're ridiculous.
Well, militias are still illegal. They've been illegal even through the Reagan era. They've been illegal since 1798. You understand that. The only legal militia that we have in this here country is the National Guard. I've said that 1,000 million times over my career, okay? And so militias are not legal entities. Yes, Donald Trump actually appealed to an illegal entity and groups of illegal entities like the 3%ers and the Proud Boys, stand back and stand by, and the Oath Keepers, who were invented as a result of Barack Obama being president. They are racist, and that this is the problem they have with the government, the racism and the expansion of rights to people that don't look like them. This is why they organize, and they are illegal entities. And the Oath Keepers actually were born during the Obama era. And then with the advent of this alt-right thing, they combined with the white extremists, and this is what we ended up with.
Right, but the thing is, though, they've been engaged. Whether you want to be, I know what you're saying about legal and militia, but they've been organized since Reagan, though. That's what I'm trying. I mean,
they can organize all themselves. They can go out into the woods, and they could, pretend to be soldiers. They can, shoot paintballs or whatever they want to do. But the second that they engage in military-style training with a plan to overthrow the government by force or to oppose by force the authority of this government, or to delay by force any official proceeding of the U.S. government, which is what we have here, they are facing 20 years in jail. That's the cutoff. That's the line between pretending and actually, engaging in seditious activity. That's the line.
Do you think this oath keeper, this leader, do you think he's going to sing? Like, in other words, start dropping names? Because we all know that Jim Jordan's, your Ted Cruz's, a lot of the Freedom Caucus helped give intel to these militia, whether they're Proud Boys or whatever, or they're just, somebody in mommy's basement with their "Don't Tread on Me" flag. They're the underground. The senators, or have been in talks with them. Whether it's through social media or
I
giving
posted.
the personal phone.
If you follow me at Twitter at Randi Rhodes, I put up last night a couple pictures of Ted Cruz with the Oath Keepers and Roger Stone, of course, with the Oath Keepers, because a picture is worth 1,000 words. But Stewie is a Yale law graduate. You understand that, right? Now, there's a couple of things you need to understand about Stewie. Stewie not only is an ex-paratrooper and a disgruntled vet, but he's also a Yale law graduate, and he's not stupid, okay? But he's also a conspiracy theorist, He believes in the whole pedophilia thing. I don't know how crazy he is. So Stewie has... Zeitgeist and all that nonsense. Stewie has two options. Stewie could either do what the Hootery militia actually did and say, his lawyer can plead that Stewie is insane, and that Stewie is he believes in this whole pedophilia thing, and he believes there's a cabal and blah, 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 and he's insane. Or Stewie can turn state's evidence against somebody bigger than Stewie. And Stewie knows these two things. So we'll see what he does.
I think he's going to sing. I think they're going to press him hard, and I think that he's going to sing.
You don't need to press him. He's looking at least 20 years behind bars, okay? And he's in his 50s, so, that'd be the rest of his life, basically, in a federal prison. So, listen, he knows this, and he's going to have his come-to-Jesus moment, if you will, if you must, if you may, that says to him, either I turn in Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley, and maybe even if he's got any ability to turn in Donald Trump, or he's talked to Mike Pence, or whatever, I don't know. Or he's going to have to, cop a plea and say he's insane and lose his law license. I don't know.
Well, I'm worried about the clock ticking out, because if the Republicans or conservatives get more power before, let's say in the midterms, and we get shellacked, it's going to be scary.
There's two things about the midterms everybody needs to know. Number one, there will be hearings about January 6th way, way, way before the midterms. They will probably start, I'm guessing, this is January, I'm guessing next month or the very beginning of March, okay? And they will air in prime time on consecutive nights. No more of this, 5 minutes here or a day here where we have the cops testify and then we don't have another hearing for 2 weeks. No, they're going to do it on consecutive nights, and they're going to do it in prime time. And America is going to see the ugly underbelly of what actually went on. And whatever evidence they have been able to compile over this past year will be presented to the American people. Again, we have social media that's in the mix that has data on all these people that are prone to propaganda that will be targeted by the Republican Party, trying to turn them against their own eyes and ears regarding what they hear. And then also there's going to be, just ahead of the midterms, a decision by the Supreme Court about our right to privacy and our right to choose our own destiny by virtue of being a woman. And those two things are going to happen before we even cast our single vote, right? So there's a lot still left to unfold before the 2022 midterms. But as the caller in Louisiana said, it ain't too early to register yourself. It ain't too early to register people you know are not registered. It's not too early to register a suburban housewife who doesn't really pay attention to politics, but might want to because of the Supreme Court decision coming down the pike. And that'll drop I'm guessing June, right ahead of the election. And that'll be all anybody talks about because this seditious thing will all be sorted. But we're going to have hearings, and they're going to be nightly, and they're going to be incredibly sickening. They will include forged documents. Oh, by the way, 7 states now forged documents. 7. Have a good weekend.